How can we use the power of play to enhance well-being and learning in kids of all ages? Our guest today is Elizabeth Cushing, and she is the CEO of Playworks, which is a national organization that's headquartered in Oakland, California, that helps schools and school districts make the most of recess in terms of child and youth development. And today we're going to explore how we can use play to enhance our well-being and learning, as well as lessons that she's learned in scaling Playworks. And they actually partnered with 61 schools in 2004 and grew that to 2,000 in 2020. And so I'm really excited to hear how she did that. And she's got some transformative perspectives to share that I think will help all of you listening out there as leaders. So Elizabeth, welcome to Leaders Transformation. We're glad that you're here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
It is a pleasure. And before we go any further, I do want to do a shout out to Teak Media, because they are the ones that introduced Elizabeth for the show. And I always like to thank those that support this show. And that is the podcast booking agents, of course, the listeners as well, and of course our amazing guests. So thank you for being here. And so let's dive in. Let's talk about the power of play and the story that kind of like how it developed into where it is today.
Yeah, so play is one of those human behaviors that we all know is integral to children's development. Just it's a good thing, right? It creates joy. It is a way that they explore. It's a way they build relationships, even take risks. And we all remember it fondly. At the same time, I think we may take for granted what's possible through play, even as adults, that there is something about when we are playing, especially if the stakes are low, the outcome, right? Like, who cares if we win a game of Foursquare or not? There's something about the ease with which we're willing to interact with each other when we're playing that's different than when we're trying to achieve a goal. And so we are all about making sure that every kid in America gets to play every day in a way that is safe and inclusive and fun. And we see a lot of benefits from that, just not only for their emotional well-being, but also for their focus and their willingness to take risks, even in the classroom.
Well, and right now we're coming out of the pandemic, and there's a lot of kids that, I mean, as adults, we can see the difference, right? Because from before and after. But if you're a kid and you're growing up in this, and now things are starting to open up, and you're going back to school and all these things, it's been really hard on a lot of kids. So maybe talk about where we're at in terms of that,
Yeah.
and maybe the ideal state, and how do we shift those kids back to a place of actually even being safe to be out there in the playing field with
Yes,
their friends.
I totally agree. We've been around for 27 years. So we've seen what schools are like for a long time and across the country in all, I mean, really in all sorts of towns, cities, states. Imagine that you were 8 years old right now, and in your kindergarten year, you got sent home to be at home for a year, a time when you would have been learning to get along with your classmates, to share, to take turns, to be away from your home. And that developmental milestone didn't happen. And so then a year later, you're thrown into that environment. And, honestly, I think all of us, all adults, were impacted by this experience of not feeling safe physically, not being able to be certain that the world would come back to itself. And you're feeling that, right, as a child. And so what we've heard from teachers, families, principals is that kids have come back with a pretty significant social delay, lacking a sense of safety and comfort in the school environment in general, and that those things are getting in the way of learning. And so because of our reputation for creating a fun and inclusive place for kids to be, both on the playground, but also in the classroom, the demand for our support from schools has just gone through the roof. And we're doing everything we can to enable kids to play and feel good at school, feel like they can count on their classmates to play in a kind and inclusive way with them, to kind of shift that feeling. And I would say right now, here we are in, the fall of 2023, things are not back yet. And we need to keep investing in this sense of how it feels for kids and for adults at schools if we hope to get them back on track learning.
So what are some practical things that you do? Because kids, go out to play and recess. What does Playworks do that's different?
There are a few things that we use play for to establish norms on the playground. So one is that transitions in the school day are really the time when things break down, from classroom to recess, from recess back to the classroom. And so we use playful transition techniques in those moments when kids come out to the playground. They line up, and before they run to play, we tell them, we use some call and response to get their attention, and then we tell them, hey, there are the following 8 games on the playground, and we note the areas where those games are being played. And then we'll say, if you want to play soccer today, you leave right now, run out to that soccer field. And then we sequence. If you're going to play Foursquare, go ahead and play Foursquare. And it just prevents injuries and the kind of chaos that can lead to hurt feelings, I think. We also have our staff, and we inspire school staff to jump in the game as well. And when adults are playing, it really signals to kids that they matter, that it's okay to get out, that making mistakes is just part of playing. And that creates a sense of like, oh, I can play a game I don't know yet how to play because the grown-ups are doing it, and the world doesn't end when they get out. We also have a couple of norms. One is for resolving conflicts, which often are the reason a game breaks down. So if you and I are playing a game and I think the ball was in and you think the ball was out, instead of arguing, we use rock, paper, scissors. It's an arbitrary game, and kids will accept the result of a rock, paper, scissors game and get back in line to play again because it wasn't about their skill, right? They save face that way. And rock, paper, scissors can just keep a game moving quite quickly. We also model, like, you get a high five when you get out. We're like, good job, nice try, get back in line. And those little things really change the way it feels on the playground. And it's not that hard to establish these norms because kids want to keep the game going. Above all, they want to keep playing. And that intrinsic motivation to play makes it so they'll follow these norms quite easily, actually.
I think maybe we need to play a lot more rock, scissors, paper in some boardrooms.
Oh, yeah. And in Congress, potentially, right?
Yeah. It actually reminds me of a guest that I had on this show a while back, and Hesha Abrams, and she is a mediator. And so she's world renowned for high stakes deals, going in and resolving conflict. And she was talking about at one point, it was like midnight, and they're arguing over, it was like $100 million deal, but they're arguing over like 5 million. And, one wants 5 million more and the other one doesn't want to pay it and all that. And she was like, okay, so we can do this a number of ways, right? We can have shots, we can do shots, we can play, and have fun. And she just like, they're looking at her going, what? And then she said, or we can just flip a coin. And so they flipped a coin, and the person who won said, I can't go back to my stakeholders and shareholders and tell them that I won this on a coin toss. So we're just going to split the difference, and we'll do 2.5 million each. And it was done. Mm-hmm. And here they had been talking for hours and hours, and all the logic and reasoning and justification and so forth. And she was able to resolve it and said, and then we can all go home and move on. So yeah, simple sometimes is the best. And that kind of brings me to adults, because some of the things that you were talking about that it helps kids with are the same things that adults that we need help with.
Yes.
And I think we're lacking a lot of play in the corporate environment. I'm not saying that we're not productive. Actually, and maybe you can talk to that about play increasing productivity
Mhm.
and how that can be very transformative for an organization.
Mhm. We play on this, obviously, ourselves as part of the regular workday. What we've noticed, we do support companies playing and have been hired by several tech companies, especially in the Bay Area, to come play with the adults in their company. And what we find is that relationships are changed by playing together. So hierarchy can kind of fall away because we're all amateurs at Foursquare. Like there's no professional Foursquare status. And so the hierarchy falls away. You also see each other as human beings when you're playing, as opposed to, oh, you're an engineer and I'm an account manager. And that breaking down of kind of labels and silos it sticks after you play. One of the strategies we use at Playworks and we encourage in companies is the check-in question. And I know that might sound like, hey, Nicole, how are you doing today? It's not that kind of check-in question. It's, hey, what was one of your most favorite Halloween costumes? And you go around the room before you start a meeting and you hear very briefly about folks' Halloween costumes, and you suddenly become like a three-dimensional person to me. And
Yes.
that changes the quality of the conversation that follows. And
Yes.
it's not important exactly what that question is, it's that I'm seeing you as a human being. The other benefit we see from playing is an adaptive behavior. So you're in a game of Foursquare and you adapt to the way the other players are playing. You adapt to the weather conditions. You adapt to your own physical well-being that day. And it's just a natural way of playing. That's creative, right? That to say, okay, my left knee is hurting me today, so I'm going to play this way. You're being creative in the way you approach a problem. And I believe that because Playworks plays during the workday, that we bring an adaptive approach to the problems we're trying to solve. And that makes us more productive in the long run. So we definitely draw a direct connection between some of these behaviors and what we're able to produce as an organization.
Yeah, I think about innovation,
Mhm.
adaptability, a lot of talk about agility, resilience,
Mhm.
collaboration, culture, all of
Also
these things.
experimentation, right? Like,
Yes.
in design work, the idea of iterate, right?
Hmm.
Try a minimal viable product, iterate. That's the same thing as playing a game, or especially a new game. And so, yeah, I think it translates directly.
So I remember when I was a kid, my parents worked really hard and they had businesses, and so they were working 7 days a week. And my dad liked it. He did like to have fun. My mom was more the serious type. But it was interesting that you were saying earlier about kids seeing adults play, because I remember not seeing my parents dance. And because there just really was never context for that, right? We didn't go
Mm.
to dances or anything like that, parties. And I remember consciously thinking as I was going to dances at school and being shy, well, I don't need to learn this because as an adult, adults don't dance. So it doesn't
Ah.
matter. And so I can just kind of wait this out.
Mm.
And when I was 14, I watched them dance. We were at an event and they were dancing. And I was like, wait, what? And it just totally messed with me, with my brain going, wait a second. I mean, this is a thing. Like we're actually going to be doing this later. So there's something there about showing our kids by example that we
Mhm.
can have fun. I think a
Mhm.
lot of kids don't want to grow up. I think look at some of the teenagers and young adults, they don't want to go out into the workforce. Why? Because it's no fun.
It doesn't
Like
look
they
fun.
don't it doesn't look fun at all when you come
Yes.
home and you're serious
Mhm.
and you hate your job, and how many, the percentage of people that hate their jobs, is pretty high. And all of this, and it's like, well, why would I want to do that? And so there's a whole transformation that gets to happen in the way that we show up to be able to even help the next generation to want to have a something to look forward to as they're an adult.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I definitely would say if I had one piece of advice for your listeners who are parents and or educators in any context, including coaches of, amateur sports, youth sports, it would be to play the game yourself with the kids, because that demonstration of you can have fun as an adult, you can learn new things, you can make mistakes. We share this love for this game, goes so far, much further than you might realize as an adult. And so we actually on YouTube have a channel that has a lot of game instruction videos, and I'm talking about very silly games that anyone can use just to infuse some of that joy and playfulness into whatever context. I have been known when my kids were younger and we would be standing in line for some long, period of time to get into the aquarium or whatever, to inspire a little game to distract them from the wait. And just to say, like, okay, this is not a fun experience we're having waiting, but we can have fun while we're doing it. Signaled that we had some agency in the experience too.
Yes.
That we could do something about that. A little bit like, the long car ride games we used to play as kids. All of those are teaching adaptive behavior to the kids. They have value. The kids don't know they're learning. That's one of the best parts, is they just think they're having fun, and yet they're learning these skills they're going to use later in life.
Yeah, I think about being at Disney or somewhere, and yeah, you're in these long lines and everybody's getting really grumpy and so forth. But to actually make it a game, that would be so memorable, even for the
Yes.
adults, that are sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, we have like 55 minutes to go," and you're like, "Oh my gosh."
And other
And
families' kids would want to jump in our game.
oh, totally. I was just thinking like the whole line would be
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Totally changing the way that they experience, that whole day. So that is awesome. Now
Yeah.
let's talk about, because you mentioned about your organization and you
Mm-hmm.
play and you experiment.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were talking about previously about the idea that you made a shift and
Yeah.
said, what if? So talk about
Uh-huh.
that what if question and kind of where that led your organization.
Yeah. Well, when I joined Playworks in 2004, we were small and we were kind of like any small business, just trying to do the thing we know how to do with as many school partners as possible, make the money work, right? Right. Like not that different from a for-profit, except that we were also fundraising for it. And over time, we did grow nationally with some help from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, actually, who invested in that, proved that we could do what we do in any school, anywhere. And so we continued to grow. And at one point in 2015, we kind of had to ask ourselves about how we define success. And is success the number of schools and kids that we support, which is what we had been using for almost 20 years in the organization? Or is it that we care about the mission being achieved, meaning how many kids are getting to play every day, whether we are the ones delivering that play or not? We want high quality play. And by high quality, we mean emotionally safe for everyone to get in the game. The rules are understood, and these norms of high fives and rock, paper, scissors are established, basically. And we realize that we care more about that end game than whether Playworks is huge or gets the credit or not. And that's a very kind of difficult thing to adjust to in our culture, where generally where winning and taking credit are like really important things. And so we decided at that time to try to invest in making accessible our practices, our tools, our resources, so others could make play happen too. It's not like we invented play. It's not like other schools that didn't know us weren't already investing in play. We discovered many of them when we started to say, hey, we're going to give away many aspects of how we play, and we'd like anyone who would like to use them to let us know. And that shift from us focused to outcome focused, really end game focused, has influenced all the decisions since. And I'm so pleased that we have taken that in and made that part of our DNA. And it's really inspired some new ways of working, including with community-based organizations like the Boys and Girls Clubs and Campfire, and finding ways to share what we know with them so they can actually work with schools. And I think we're reaching more kids because of it.
So how do you, and by the way, first of all, I love that. I love that because, it's a subtle shift. It seems like a subtle shift, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
huge shift in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, most people would say, well, yeah, well, we have to have KPIs and metrics and all those things, but are the KPIs, like you said, for what is a priority to you? How many schools, how many kids? So how do you manage the balancing the fact that you need to fundraise
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time keep the mission first? And if you're giving it away, like what's the revenue model? What's the
Right.
fundraising model around that?
Right. So we have, I think of this in this way. We have our business of delivering services to schools and some community-based organizations with a very strong earned income model. So 70% of our revenue comes from earned income. We're being paid a fee for putting staff in schools or training schools or training a local community-based organization. And that's using our intellectual property and experience to support their work. And that's not free. We're also fundraising 30%. And that's important as a nonprofit organization to garner the support of the philanthropic community locally. Gives us credibility. It's also an important aspect of saying, yeah, play matters in our community. So while we could have a model that's 100% earned income, there are real benefits strategically to having philanthropy. In addition to that, we have a set of work that we are focused on giving away what we know how to do. That includes free resources on the web, and it includes some partnerships where we're teaching those community-based organizations to do what we do. And we see those two things as complementary of each other. And certainly, I had to have a lot of conversations with our board of directors and with our staff around their worries about giving away essentially our IP in those partnerships. And we had to talk both about the mission reason to do that, right? The high level strategic reason. And we talked about how will we try to protect quality and our brand. So the most recent model is actually a certification where a community-based organization, youth development, out of school time organization goes through a year-long certification process with us. They're getting trained and they're partnering with a local school. We're measuring their impact with our own tool. We are in an agreement that they will, if they achieve certification, they will continue in a long-term relationship with us, giving us data. They can only use our name if they're meeting certain benchmarks. And I believe that it is going to be a successful way to balance the control with the letting go. We'll see if that works in most cases. I think we're working with mission-aligned organizations who care about kids and care about quality. And I'm hopeful about it. It's not airtight. And I believe that the opportunity to reach more kids is worth the risk of some leakage on quality in those partnerships.
Well, and I think the difference between coming from that place of scarcity to abundance
Hmm.
is can't be underestimated, because when you think about, if you're worried about people stealing your stuff
Hmm.
and or copying it, then you're actually playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win,
Right.
in a game analogy.
Yeah.
And so, I always say to clients, I say, look, you can't win a game on defense. The most you can do is minimize losses in
Hmm.
theory. And so are we looking to create impact? This is the leaders of transformation. Are we looking to create transformation, or are we looking to protect our assets? Whatever those assets are. And so, yeah, it's just really interesting, because that plays out, that principle of what you're describing plays out in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
And it also, I heard in that, is it for you to have a certification program, it challenges your staff and whoever's facilitating those certifications to create greater value, to
Right.
deliver greater value in those programs.
Hmm.
Like, it almost creates another tier, right?
Hmm.
So, okay, we've been doing amazing. What does it look like for that next level? Amazing, an impact. And then this will give away,
Right.
the lower
Exactly.
level will give away. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very interesting.
You just described our whole strategy. And in some way, the pandemic creating a very obvious need that we cannot meet directly ourselves nationwide.
Yeah.
It's too big. Creates another uh, argument and then comfort for our teams to say, well, we can't serve every school directly, so let's empower, certify this another ring of folks because the kids are suffering, honestly. And we're seeing in the schools where this is happening, these partnerships, that the measurement data is coming back equal to what we do with our own staff. And that is both heartening and somewhat surprising to some of our folks. And I think there's a long-term business for us in supporting that ring of organizations. They need ongoing training, refresher training. They're going to want whatever new things we are developing. So it's not that we're undercutting our own business. We're actually expanding it.
Yes. Recently, I was talking to a gentleman who's extremely successful. Has a company, privately held company. It's like worth a billions of dollars, and he had an interesting perspective on it. And he was talking about how businesses are looking to get market share, and it's like, I want to get more market share. And what if we looked at, and this is what he does in his businesses, is what if we looked at increasing the size of the market,
Right.
increasing the size of the pie, so we all get to eat pie. And it's not about, win lose. It's a win-win
Mhm.
concept, right? And that's what you're talking about here, is we increase the pie, we
That's what we're
increase
doing.
the market, and so more kids get benefit, they can benefit from that. And it also creates awareness for adults. And what we were talking about earlier is the adults that get to be involved in this. I mean, it's just, there's huge potential. What if we actually just open this up so everybody could have this opportunity to play?
Yes.
What that could mean. We would need to have a lot less remediation and performance, you
Better
know,
attendance,
yes, all of that.
all sorts of things. I think in our experience, schools where kids are playing are schools where kids are learning.
Yes. Yeah,
That's a
talk about that brain science around that.
it's a huge market then. Kids need to feel safe and secure in order to learn. I think we know this as adults, right? When we're under stress, very hard to learn something new. And so we help create the conditions of feeling of safety. I belong here. I can learn now. And when you add in the value of a teacher student relationship where the student has seen the teacher play with them and they're human beings who get out in a game, the ability of that teacher to reach that student has improved. And so
Yeah.
we know that when the brain is calm, there a lot more learning can happen, and that's what we do. We make that possible, and that need is true for every child in every school. And so we're trying to contribute to a thriving learning environment in a way that's quite simple. It's just that traditional education reform efforts didn't consider play as a lever. And we have proven that it absolutely is.
Yes. Well, I think about how we're playing, we're young and we're having fun. And then we go to school and they go like, sit still, don't move, sit in your chair. Kids are like, and so now it's about forcing these kids to conform to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they graduate at some point down the road, they graduate. And now you're supposed to go into the business world and, supposed to create and innovate and all those things. And it's like, wait, what? It's very confusing. So I love what you're doing, Elizabeth. I love what the mission behind it, and the fact that you are putting the mission first. One of my mentors years ago, he talked about mission first, team second, individual third. If you get those out of order, things go sideways. And so you got to keep the mission first. The team will be supported, and the individuals on those teams will be supported as well when you keep the mission first. And
I really
that's what you're
appreciate that.
doing.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I haven't heard it said that quite that way. And I would say that Playworks culture, which existed before I arrived, really was set up in that way from the beginning. And when we do pulse surveys of our staff all the time, there are two things that our staff say keep them there. The mission is number one, and the people they get to work with is number two. And that has not changed over the whole 2 decades that I've been there. And I think I see myself as the leader, as a person who's responsible for protecting the culture, for creating space and investment in it, for encouraging that culture of play and experimentation, and valuing every play worker as critical to the business's success. So I really appreciate that frame and its connection to culture, which many corporate entities are recognizing more and more. And for us, it's not that hard. It's not that expensive or that hard to invest in more play.
Yes. Well, they talk about humanity in the workplace, and it's like, well, no kidding.
I know.
Like,
we are
newsflash, we are humans. Hello.
Yeah.
So, and that's not how we've been operating for so many years. And so it's coming full circle around to that. And I love the fact that you are leading the way in that and doing it with kids, but also doing it with adults, and creating creating the space for adults to do it as well, even the teachers, right? How that must be much more refreshing for the teachers to be able to have fun and have those connections with their students. And then with the corporate recess that you do, it's just awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about this. I hope that our listeners and viewers will be stimulated to think, how can I put play into my day? Put play into my day. There you go. That rhymes. But put play into my day, put play into the work, bring it to work with me, bring it home with me. And wow, what a difference that could make. It's simple. Sometimes we want to make it so complicated, but the most effective solutions oftentimes are the simplest.
Yeah. And the most that you're doing it well because it feels good.
Yes. Right? Yes.
And so
it's good.
Sometimes that's the evidence we point to.
Yeah. So where do people find out more, and what would be the first step for, like, if parents are listening to this, and I'm just thinking about like parents, schools, and how do they say, yes, I want this,
Yes. So you can go to playworks.org and there are links to get Playworks at your school or contact us. There's a map. You can click on your state and that will directly connect to someone on our team who can get back to you and let you know what might be possible in a direct relationship with us. We also have a Playworks YouTube channel with all sorts of free resources. Feel free to go take advantage of those. And we have another website called Recess Lab that is provides some very basic building blocks to making your recess better, and a recess checkup that you can take. Pretty simple measurement tool. So we're trying, as I said earlier, to give away as much as possible. I'm on LinkedIn. I actually just published an article yesterday in Stanford Social Innovation Review about this collaborative model. So Nicole, I'll send you the link to that. It describes kind of the how and why of giving away our secret sauce, which might be of interest to folks. And try the check-in questions. The next time you have a meeting, do a check-in question. One of my favorites is, what was your first concert? And that elicits all sorts of stories, and it does a good job of forming some team bonds around that experience. So that's the one I would try first.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your article, and yes, send that over to us, and we'll make sure that that goes in the show notes as well as everything else. So that is awesome. Elizabeth, thank you again for being here, and thank you to our listeners for being here as well. And we hope that this has inspired you to get out and start to play a little bit. Think about the ways that you can bring play into your day, and bring it to your teams, so that when people are having fun, they're learning and they're more creative. They're learning so many skills in that process that, are things that as business leaders, if we're looking at the competitive advantage, quote unquote, or we're looking at the strategic advantage, maybe is a better way to put it, it's these types of things that give you that edge. It gives you that edge because you've got people that are fully mentally, emotionally engaged, spiritually even engaged in what it is that they're doing. And so, I always say, if you want their head to come to work, well, then you can just pay them whatever it is that the job is worth. But if you want their heart, it takes a little bit more than that. So, and that's what we're talking about here, is for people's hearts to come to work, people's hearts to be engaged in that relationship. And so everybody wins. So I encourage you to, apply something that you learned here today. I always say leaders of transformation take action. And because without action, without doing something and stepping into it, then nothing changes. And so we encourage you to do that. We'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can send us a note through that, of course, on social as well. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to seeing you next time for another episode of the Leaders of Transformation. Have a great day.